Let's make sure this is all. So, you're absolutely right. We're in an environment right now. It's a workers' market in a way that it hasn't been in a very long time, and the reality of the situation is harming the economy, but
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to. No, hello, focus. Everything technically that could go wrong today is going wrong.
It's not the heat, it's the humidity, Chris. It's
Right.
causing all the electronics to
Look
mess
at
up.
look at me sweating like a pig. Well, I don't even know if pigs sweat. So the last
Well,
couple of months, both Jim and I have been working on. Although I've been focusing more on this particular subject, a program for the Vermont Home Builders and Remodelers Association to try to make a stab at helping with this chronic shortage
of
of
workers, of course.
of workers, exactly. And so while we've been talking since the show ended, right? We've been talking about initiatives to try to increase the workforce and do workforce development. There was S 109,
Yep.
which is the weatherization program or weatherization bill, which in the end did not pass, but the money for that program ended up being brought through. So there is $2 million that has been earmarked for workforce development on the weatherization crew side. And Efficiency Vermont has been running a series of meetings. Jim has been and I have been invited to those meetings, and we've given our opinions. These meetings are important because Efficient Vermont needs guidance and help. Although the person who's running it, Laura Capps, is really
Oh, she's
fantastic.
incredible. Oh yeah, definitely.
Very
So she,
together, very knowledgeable, very open to hearing everybody's. They're doing a very. This is an interesting thing we can talk about for a second. This almost chronic need to include everyone who has an opinion.
yeah,
Um, well, the first call had 75 people on it.
I know.
And I certainly do want the government to be listening to people and hearing everybody, but not everybody should have necessarily access to every meeting. I think that they'll winnow out. I think they're expecting people to lose interest and kind of drop out. The reason people show up is because we found out that there is indeed a pile of money available, and as
Oh
soon as
yeah,
you make a pile of money available, people are gonna jump in and
exactly.
have their says, and everyone should have their say. I just think that it's unmanageable having 75 people trying to come up with one program. Although once again, I think Laura's doing an amazing job of it with all of the restrictions.
Well,
Um,
to that, the committee that I'm on, she is, it's, part of this weatherization workforce collaborative that we're trying to get everything together here and develop a curriculum that the weatherization industry can use. But what happens is, as soon as you dive into this with all these other people there, it really divulges into, not divulges, but it morphs into what do we need for workers for the whole construction industry, and what do we need for their knowledge base, and what do we need on all these other levels, and you kind of get the message a little muddled. And so with that, we're trying to stay focused on using this money that was for weatherization for existing housing stock, and making sure that the workers have the proper skill set. Now, with that in mind, what Laura put out, she was able to pull from different organizations curriculum already, like standards for BP from BPI, some of the workforce different initiatives in the state already, which is great, and compile this together. Great format, was 38, 39 pages long. Went through it the other day. We got to collaborate on that, making some changes. But at the same time, what we realized is, and I had this this flashback to the 80s when the movie Weird Science came out, when you had these two teenagers who were using the best recipe to find the best girlfriend, and they were made it in the computer, punched everything in, and poof, everything came out, and it was a perfect girlfriend. It's kind of like that with the worker development that we're trying. I mean, granted, everything that she had in there was stellar. It was wonderful. And yes, you want to have a worker in today's industry having those skill sets, and whether it's going to be a weatherization contractor, a new builder, a renovation contractor, an electrician, they need to understand building science. And yet all these things are great, especially in a state that is the wild, wild west of Vermont, of New England, that is. They need a better standard so that we continue to prevent bad things from happening on the other side, and we have significant resource preservation, and we're not wasting items again because we have to replace them prematurely. That being said, though, where are the workers going to come from that are going to take this curriculum? How are we going to entice them in when this industry, swinging a hammer, lifting heavy objects, climbing to heights, crawling into basements and crawl spaces and attics and lions and tigers and bears, oh my, it isn't the most glamorous of job. If you're passionate about it, however, and this is what you do, and you can start off with a plot of land with nothing on it, you have the vision to see something done. And then after you put the blood, sweat, and tears into this, you take a step back, you see that a family is living in this wonderful home now that they, is going to be called a home, not just a house. And you see that that's a wonderful thing. You're passionate about it. Or you see that you're going to be able to save people money on their energy bills, and you're going to stop the abuse of and waste of materials. That's going to be better for the planet and better for everybody. That's what you need to be passionate about. Having just a curriculum, though, for people to jump into, that's a little more challenging, especially since, as Chris was saying, the dynamics over the generations in our society have fundamentally changed. Yeah. Where you look back at the Great Depression time, where people were out of work all the time. So, or as Chris said, it's now a workers' market. Before, it was an employer's market. People were hungry, not just for food, but they were hungry for work. Something comes out of the fact that when you can put in an honest day's work and step back and know something was accomplished, either you solved a problem, you helped somebody, you left something, mark on this place in a good way, that is rewarding. That builds confidence in an individual. And short of that, it creates a lot of angst in our workforce, whether that's youth, whether that's transition employees, or people going from one to another. You need to have that rewarding type of skill set or opportunity to work that way. And so what changed is back, I remember the story about the Hoover Dam. When that was being constructed, you had lines of people outside, unfortunately, waiting for somebody to perish, which did happen, and so they could get the next job. That's how hungry people were for work. And at that point in time, you also had the Civilian Conservation Corps that President Roosevelt set up in 1935, I believe, that actually used youth, predominantly male, but any youth could be used for this, to be able to put them to work so they weren't languishing around wondering what they were going to do and building up that angst and then not seeing a purpose or anything to go forward with. They gave work for that, and it worked towards increasing and enhancing the infrastructure of our country. And we just passed this infrastructure bill that is it going to do that? Is it going to offer that? And our young people need that. Instead of just, getting more of an ability to sit around and not choose things and everything else. You have great kids out there. You have great youth. Don't get me wrong. But we cannot promote something that's not going to challenge our youth, challenge people to do better, to want to do better. And that's what's going to cause people to drive to different career fields. But if there's not a necessity for them to do so, I see that we're almost fighting the losing battle. I'm not trying to be negative. We want to go ahead and get something out there, a great program for those workers who do come into it, that they're going to be excellently trained. But you know what? One person can only do so much, whether you're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, Chris, or whatever. You can only do so much. And yet we've got to, definitely get this in place, this plan, the curriculum, and be able to go out and try to pull people into this industry. But understand every industry is looking for these workers. And that's where the big challenge is for everybody.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. So we had a town hall meeting on the 15th of July, where we gathered a bunch of people. We had like 26 people in the room, and we were asking people, owners of companies, consultants, people in private industry, but also public industry, what they thought were the important things here. And basically, there are I break it into 3 different sets of things. I have 3 circles in my diagram. And the first one is, where do we get people? The second one is, what do we teach them in order to take them from being someone who's never worked in construction before into being someone who has basic skills, won't hurt themselves on the job site, will be safer on the job site and ready to work. And the third one is, where are we going to place these people? And that third one, the last part of the meeting got very interesting, because and this is what Jim was alluding to before, is the people that were asking to join the workforce, the people between the ages of 18 and 30, maybe even 32. Um, these people have a different social sensibility in a lot of ways than the people who are the majority workers on the job site. The people we have working on the job site, the average age of a construction worker or carpenter in the home building industry in Vermont is 58. Now I'm 56, so it's 2 years older than me, a year and a half older than me. Uh,
52.
Jim is
We both have a lot
52.
of we have a lot of snow on the mountain, Chris.
That's right. And what we know about those work environments, because we're both white cis males, we know that it can get kind of cringy sometimes, especially if you're talking about asking people who are set in their ways and have been doing this for 1,000 years to start doing something like respecting someone's pronouns, or creating an environment where there's not a lot of trash talk about LGBTQ people, or sensitivity to racial issues. I'm not at all saying that the crews that are out there are part and parcel always unpleasant environments for these people, for the youth. But I am saying that what I'm hearing, not only from my own kids who are in that age range, but also from other people who are interacting with these kids, these young people who we want to get into the industry, that they're not going to want to come back to a job site on the third, fourth, fifth day if they don't feel included in a certain way, if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel like they're members of the group. That and what really brought that home to me, Jim, is when we were talking with Patty Comline from DRM, it's the lobbyist for the VBRA. One of her children just finished taking a building course at Yestermorrow. Yestermorrow is a great school. These people learned a lot of very good skills, including the building science, because Yestermorrow doesn't not teach that. Class of 25, half of them want to stay in Vermont. But these are hippies. I mean, these are, social warriors, social justice warriors. These are people who would walk off a job site if someone was blatantly racist or blatantly sexist or blatantly homophobic. So we have to look at all the pieces of the puzzle here as to, yes, we want people to work. Yes, we want to give them a good education to get them in. Yes, we want to make sure that what they're learning also includes basic building science so they understand the challenges that Jim and I talk about all the time of making a house tighter, more energy efficient. You also have to be much more careful about how moisture moves in and out of assemblies, how things dry, how different materials affect that. Jim and I have been talking about this for years, and we've been talking about it with you all since last October on the radio. That has to be part and parcel of it. So the business owner side of it is a crucial part, and that's a nut we have to crack. I think that it's not a problem. I think that once we start engaging, getting groups of people who want to take this training, getting them trained, and getting a pool of people who will take them as apprentices or interns or new hires, whatever that works out, however we figure that out to work, that those people are also going to be like, I understand. This is sometimes the job site is like being on the set of Archie Bunker. So we've I just wanted to put that out there that
But with that, Chris,
but it is
this is
coming from
why
both
this is a great
sides.
show because yeah, we're definitely coming from both sides on this. And, granted, I'm in the workforce every day with my own company. I've had that with employees. I have it with other subcontractors, a myriad of those, and go from job site to job site with other contractors. And I think there are just so many people that are concerned about doing the right job and getting it done. Some of these things, I think we can, at the same time, yes, be respectful of others, point blank. You don't have a right to go just yell at somebody. You don't have a right to belittle somebody. You don't have a right to do a character assassination or anything like that. I get that. But I also think that if we try to make everybody so aware that sometimes we're creating a minutia that stifles some of the other progress. I'm not saying accept the bad things. I'm just wondering what I've seen is not as rampant as some may go ahead and try to pronounce. And if we're more so concerned, because I love what Rodney King said after the LA riots and that trial. Unfortunately, he was beaten by the police, but yet after that trial, he said, "Can't we all just get along?" And I thought at the time it was kind of a foolish statement because I was a young kid, just in high school, and I said, "Gosh, that's kind of foolish." I've come to champion that because really, in this whole thing and strife and tensions that we have throughout the country, sometimes if you keep picking at a scab, you're going to just bleed again. You don't let it heal. And yet at the same time, I'm not saying put a deaf ear towards it or just, cover your eyes and not, see no evil, hear no evil and whatever. I'm not saying that at all. Don't allow those things to happen. But at the same time, I think a lot more people are concerned with the workers I deal with, and I deal with a broad spectrum, are really concerned about getting the job done, doing it right, looking forever. I said to people before when they were asking me, geez, would you hire a woman? Would you hire a person of a different race? Would you hire somebody who's from a different country? Oh gosh, yes. If they're willing to learn, if they're willing to work, if they're willing to help the cause of what we're doing, 100%, who cares about the other issues? You're there to get the job done and provide your clients with what they're looking for, which is an excellent product. Yep. And I'm all for that, and I just don't want to overcomplicate things at the same time, because I think we can get lost in some discussions where, as you said, Chris, now these things are running in tandem. And yet, is it taking up more bandwidth? I'm not saying ignore them, but I'm saying don't create a bigger issue that now we're trying to juggle really big weights, and it just makes everything really challenging. That's my concern.
I don't disagree. I don't think there's an easy answer to this. I think
no, not at all.
I think one of the things that one of the members of the VBRA apprenticeship subcommittee brought up, Derek, was in one of our first meetings, which we were discussing.
Yep.
The Rob Shea carpentry way of looking at hiring new people, and his concern was not part and parcel of that, but his concern was that we as employers, whatever size your crew is, whether it's you and one other person or you and 50 people, we need to start looking at being a holistic support for that person. Because a lot of the people that we're interacting with who are in that age group, the 18 to 32, the 18 to 35, those people have been dealing with some very difficult social situations. Some of them come from families of abuse. Some of them are themselves addicted to alcohol or drugs. Sometimes they're down on the luck. Sometimes they're having problems at home. And what Derek was saying was, look, we have to also be a part of the social network. We also have to check in and say, hey, how's it going? Or you're having trouble. Can I help? How can I help? It's not always financial, right? Sometimes it's just lending an open ear or knowing a resource that person didn't have access to, maybe mental health resources or something like that. So we're definitely looking at a much more holistic way of looking at an employee from the owner boss point of view. And so what we need to make sure that we're doing as we're doing this, find a person, I'm trying to do this so it works, find a person, train a person, get them in a job, make sure that the company that they go into is already working on those things, is already offering those types of things. We're talking with Marianne Sheehan from the Vermont Business Roundtable yesterday, and she was saying the number one thing that is decisive for whether people stay on the job, among a lot of different things, but one of the things that's the biggest is benefits. People want to come into a job, they want to have a paid vacation, they want to have health insurance. A lot of these small builders can't afford that. Just having the person there with their the workers' comp and the unemployment insurance.
But let's say why they can't afford it. Because here's the thing. So many people have this image, especially in Vermont, which is completely a misconception, is that they're the big King Midas sitting on the hill counting all their money. Are there some really wealthy builders in the state? Certainly. But overall, most builders are small businesses, and they're individuals or they're family owned, but they're smaller entities. And for them to come up with this extra cash, they have one place to go with that is to go back to the client and say, we're charging you more. And so people say, yes, this is a great idea, but it means clients, you're going to help fund this because the builder has so many pockets and you can't look for more that are hidden with more money. And so it does become a real challenge. And I understand that's what the workforce is looking for. And in this competitive environment, everyone's paying so much more, where it's $20 to start as a busboy or something like that. And you think, my gosh, I've never would think that would be possible. But yet, if you don't pay it, your restaurant's closed. And so it's a new dynamic.
Yeah, and that brings us right back to the pressures on these people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that workers have in Vermont, unlike in some other places, is that housing is just completely unaffordable.
Yes. Understood.
The
Yeah.
percentage of a person's income who's making $15 to $20 an hour. You and I talked about this all those years ago. Driving around, we were talking about one of your workers, and we were like, Jim's like, I know how much he makes. And I was like, well, what is that? Let's multiply that out and turn that into an annual salary. And the guy was working, 40-hour weeks. He was doing all the work. He was a good worker until he wasn't, but he was until he wasn't. And
Yeah.
and we figured out that he was making $40,000 a year. He has
At
two
22 bucks an hour.
at,
Yeah.
yeah, he had two kids. He had a house. He had all kinds of stuff going on, and
Yep.
and we were just amazed at how he was able to function as a person trying to build himself up in society and create capital for himself and wealth.
Exactly.
That half of his income was going to his housing.
Yes.
In the 1970s, you were not supposed to be spending more than a quarter of your income on housing. So, and the most recent trends in the state of people coming from very expensive, well-paid places in the major cities along the coast coming up here, finding a nice house because they no longer have to go into an office, has and the increase in price in lumber has exacerbated the market here. So we need some kind of program where we create, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 working workforce housing units that are, are this much, and they never increase in value except for increases in based on inflation. There's a guy I interviewed once. His name is Rob Robertson, and he said one program they're doing in some buildings in New York City is saying 20% of all the units have to be at this cost, and you can sell it to a person with moderate means, with a working class person, a person in the workforce, a busboy, a carpenter, an electrician, any of those things. That person can buy that apartment for $50,000, and if they're done with it after 5 or 7 years, they can sell it, but they can't sell it at market rate. They sell it at $50,000 plus inflation, and the whole point of that is maintaining a stock of housing that's affordable for people. And we've got to crack this nut here in Vermont. There's no way to get around it. We can't ask these people to be homeless and working full-time jobs.
Well, going back to the Civilian Conservation Corps, what if, oh my gosh, what if the government actually had the chutzpah, if you will,
Chutzpah.
Sorry, that's why I had you here, Chris.
That's right. The local Jew gives you the pronunciation.
I didn't give a word to it, but anyway, but if we actually had a requirement, that once again, the reason why you have somebody be able to be on a job or have employment, whatever, is not just to be, an arduous, horrible type of job that you just hate. No, more so it's something that's going to be rewarding to you. And let's say you were getting help with housing, but you were employed because you were getting funding to help with that you weren't. Now this is touching the sacred cow here, but you weren't sitting around and just collecting, but you were actually contributing at the same time. Yep. And developing a skill that will be rewarding to that self of that person at the end. And so you don't stay where you are. I'm a big advocate of helping the widows, the orphans, the person who's destitute, whatever, help those people get to that next level, not just stay where they are and propagating that. Let's propagate success. And that's where I think a lot of our workforce can come from, because let's say you do that. Let's say you're in this type of a thing where you're building things to help this, but you're helping yourself have a place to live, but you're learning something at the same time. So when you're out, you're in one of these high paying construction jobs, and the construction job and the payment of the past is gone. Yeah. This is what COVID did. Definitely. You didn't just talk about a moderate increase. We don't have to worry about the minimum wage bill being increased to $15 an hour. Oh my gosh, if you're paying that, I don't know where you got that worker, because they don't exist. That's
in this industry.
Exactly.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
That's a novice employee in the construction industry.
Definitely.
So what I one of the things that we're doing with this program, and one of the ideas that we're floating with this program that the VBRA is putting together, is to have crews that
Hmm.
go in and retrofit, these abandoned motels that are all
Sure.
over the state, or
Yeah.
houses that have been, that should be torn, that maybe not should be torn down, but are tax lien buildings or whatever. The governor put out a memo the other day, or let be known that the state has $200 million, because mostly because of federal money,
Sure.
and that money has not yet been earmarked. And I spoke right up, not like not everybody wants a part of this money. I don't want any of this money myself. I'm not looking to get rich on government like some people in the past. J.P. Morgan, one of the most famous examples of that, by the way. But what we want to do with this program is possibly get some of that money to buy some uh, dilapidated buildings and have a crew that fixes the building up, and that crew is a crew that is training crew, right? So we get people, we give them basic skills, we put them on this training crew. They work there for 4 months or 6 months, and either they're working for pay and for equity in purchasing or owning one of the units that they're renovating,
Right.
or creating workforce housing that will then be available for other workers. It's not just the
That's
construction
great.
workers, right?
Yeah.
But that's the type of program that you're talking about, like the workers program during the 1930s.
Yeah.
My dad was a kid during that time. He always spoke very fondly of the work that those crews did, and it was a time when we really needed to get everybody working, and we're kind
Sure.
of there.
We are.
We let's hope that, because that solves three problems, right? That solves part of the workforce development housing problem. That also develops workers, and it creates a consistent flow of qualified entry level workers into the workforce. And that's what we've been missing. As a state, we've been trying to get this right for since the 1980s. I had a meeting, I've said this before, I'll say it
Yeah.
again. I had a meeting about a year and a half ago about this, and the people who were in the room were all in their 70s and 80s, and they sat around and they were like, "Hey, I remember you. We sat in a room just like this in 1985 and talked about these exact same things." And the state has tried often to fix it. The state has a history of starting programs that are not funded well into the future, and those programs collapse. Um,
Yep.
that's why using this one-time money to buy a bunch of properties and have them renovated is a good investment. Instead of trying to fund a long-term program, let's just get the properties and pay to have them renovated, and then we'll have a asset for the state.
Yeah.
Workforce housing for the state well into the future.
Well, it
Uh,
becomes an investment instead of an expenditure.
yeah,
It's a huge difference because expenditures don't yield fruit down the road. Investments do, and that's why, yeah, Chris, I applaud that. That's a definite a win if as that can be brought to fruition.
yeah. There's a lot of moving pieces, and hopefully we're. Everybody keeps telling me there's plenty of money for the ideas that I have. We just have to ask the right people for it, and we've got lots of
Sure.
ideas about that. So if you, as the watcher, are interested, you can follow what's going on. We'll be giving updates here on the workforce development program for the VBRA. Of course, Jim and I are huge members and supporters of the VBRA. Jim
Hey, I've
just
got the tattoo.
yeah.
I'm just not gonna take my shirt off.
Yeah, please let's keep this at least PG
Sure,
13.
certainly.
Uh, so that's our discussion on workforce development. We'll update you all next time or in the future about that. But I did want to talk about the other segments for tonight's show. We have three segments tonight, pre-recorded segments. The first one is a new one It's about a tiny house, and we've spoken about this tiny house before. When Jim and I were doing the radio show, which once again will be starting again on October 1st on WDEV out of Waterbury, um, we got a phone call from someone who had a tiny house that was having some building science issues. So
Major. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and Jim made an appointment to go out there, and we went out. Well, I think it was the 26th of December was the first visit,
Yeah,
and
but hear
then
this. This was the great thing about this, and those who are watching this, whether now or in the future, a call came through the VBRA, and this is why that's such an important resource for the state, because there needs to be a clearinghouse for the resources of contractors and who can actually come take a look at something should issues come up or a new build needs to happen. That's a great resource, and it's another reason why to be a member, because you're going to get the call like, here, this person needs somebody. So yes, Chris,
yeah.
it was late in the year. It was cold out. And yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so the video that we're going to show tonight is actual video from our first visit, including a moment where Jim was like, "Well, I wonder if the wall is rotting," and he sticks his hand in and
Yeah.
comes out with dripping wet OSB just turned into mulch, vertical mulch.
And this is
Um,
why we're so adamant about getting building science right. As I like to say, is you may not respect building science. Well, it's not going to respect you and your efforts either.
that's
You've
right.
got to get this right. And this was a stellar storybook, romance type of thing of a young couple, professionals getting started in life, wanting to be frugal in what they did, live a modest footprint on the earth. And they thought it'd be great to get into the tiny house situation and then go ahead and get showcased on HGTV as this is the way to go. Well, you see that on the forefront with all the smoke, mirrors, and makeup and everything else and bright lights. What you don't see is what proper methods were used to construct this. And fast forward only 3 years, and they
3 years.
yes, and they spent $70,000 on this tiny house, which is not a small expenditure. It was probably the most major investment that they had made up to now, and it's probably was their savings at that point. And then all of a sudden, they didn't realize that they had actually purchased a mushroom factory. But though it was in the kitchen, it wasn't in the fridge. It was in the walls
It was in the floor.
and the floor
Yeah,
too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So that's the first bit. We'll be watching that, and just so you all know, Jim and I ended up buying that tiny house, and we're going to be doing a complete retrofit of it: windows, walls, floors, the whole thing, and we'll be making videos of that as well. So this is
And,
the
and this is why we did it, because it's so easy for people in this, especially in today's day and age, to point out what's wrong. But the bigger challenge is to make it right. And so Chris and I said, listen, we do this all the time, forensic wise, going to these homes where things didn't work out, giving suggestions on how to fix. But we really wanted to prove, because we both have experience in this, a lot of experience, of making the situation correct. So we wanted to give hope to those who were embarking on a new endeavor to build one or correct one. And as soon as we got it towed to the site, Chris, that day I get another call of somebody seeing us tow it to the site and said, my gosh, is this the one that you were talking about? And my in-laws bought one that was built by a school on their trades program, and within 2 years it had failed for the same reasons. And so they were tearing it down once again, only to reappoint it, and spending a lot of money, and it shouldn't have had to be done that way.
yeah. So we're very excited about the tiny house retrofit. We're calling the
Yes.
segment the tiny house disaster. And so the first episode is about our first meeting with them. And after that, we have part 3 of our audit eavesdropping, where we leave the basement of the house in Barry and venture into the second floor and looking into 2 attics, one above the original house and one above a 3-season porch that was incorporated into the house before the couple bought it. We'll be going deeper into that. This is what we call the pre-blower door inspection. So we're making sure one of the most important things about doing a blower door test is you have to make sure that there's no hazardous materials you're going to be sucking through the house. And a lot of houses of the age of the house that we were in, 1909,
Yeah.
often have vermiculite in. And vermiculite, once again, is a perfectly innocuous substance in and of itself, but it was mined in mines where veins of asbestos ran through it. So almost all of the vermiculite that was used as insulation back in the day is contaminated with asbestos. So we were able to determine during this particular segment of the audit that there was no asbestos, so we could go ahead with the blower door. So next week we will be having a special on blower doors. And hopefully be having an interview with the infamous and famous Dave Keefe, formerly of Efficiency Vermont, now retired. So hopefully we'll have an interview with him about blower door technology, why we use blower doors, how we use blower doors, and where blower doors are going into the future. And very importantly, that for the first time, the code requires blower doors on all new construction. So a real diagnostic tool in the field. Up until now, a builder was allowed to just look at a wall and say, hey, that is 3 air changes per hour by visual inspection. So that's that. And the very last one is the final interview bit with Jacob Rakusen, where talking about new frameworks as an employer, as an organization that has worked very hard and long to incorporate people that didn't feel comfortable in other companies or didn't feel welcome in the construction company, new Americans, LGBTQ workers, founded by a trans man, new frameworks. So we're going to talk about all of that with Jacob, and then we'll come back and say goodnight. And Jim, you had your finger up, so I want to make sure that.
Well, no, these first two segments really exemplify one of our favorite statements, because you start into these meetings with clients where they may or may not know that they've got an issue, and they definitely don't know how bad it is. And we're not trying to be alarmist in any case, but we've just come to find out we're not going to be minimalist. We're going to tell them what is going on, what needs to be done, and how to fix that. So usually when we see their countenance start to drop, we turn and say, "Don't worry. The first day is the worst day. It gets better from here." So you're going to see that happen.
If you follow our advice, it gets better from here.
It does. Yeah, you could duplicate the terror if you build it like in kind, like it was originally built, and expect different results, and it fails again.
That's right.
So definitely, if you follow the advice, you're going to be on an upward path. And the tiny house will, and the regular homes will definitely perform like they should and last at the same time.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to jump right into the tiny house video. I believe this is about 10 minutes long. I'll jump back on and introduce the Barry part 3 of the Barry audit eavesdropping, and then we'll jump in one more time before the Jacob Rakusen interview. So here we go.
Cool.
So just to recap, I just walked in. Okay. Hi, I'm Chris. How you guys doing? You're Chris, and you're Brianna, and you are Don, and you're Chris's dad. Yeah. Okay. And this is Jim, and we are at the tiny house on wheels in Burlington. And this tiny house was built for you 3 years ago. Almost to the day by a builder in Connecticut.
And their company is Craft and Sprout.
Craft and Sprouts.
That's what it is.
So, Jim and I have a radio show, and Chris and Brianna sent in a request for us to come and take a look at this. This is a passive house. This is not. Throw that out. This is a tiny house. There are lots of houses, and they're having some durability issues. And this house was built in Connecticut by a builder in Connecticut. It was a part of a HGTV show.
Yes, Tiny House Big Living.
Tiny House Big Living, and we'll do some research, and we'll see if we can dig that up. And here is what happens when you don't follow building science advice. So here we go.
That's on?
Yeah. That always turns off as a part of it's recording.
I didn't want you to talk the whole time.
No, exactly. So they've ripped off the floor. We had OSB on top of the metal decking.
So this right here is metal, the frame. This here is the pan of the trailer.
Also metal.
And then the wall here has isonine, which is not for this climate either, you can tell.
That's crazy. You can stick your finger.
Yep.
Well, isonine is just single part spray foam. It's a vapor open spray foam. It's got very good uses when you use it.
When you use it right.
Right. And so what they had here, Jim, why don't you go ahead and give us a background on this assemblies
so
here.
what they had here is, first and foremost, the clients had received or indicated that they noticed some areas where mold was coming through. They did a little bit of an investigation. Once they investigated, they found further that this is a much bigger problem. They started tearing some of the things up to the point where they even had a mold mitigation team come in. and try to fix some of this. But as you walk in the door, you smell that, you can tell and smell that things are still not right. With that, as they continue to pull more and more up, they found more and more of an issue. And a lot of this is coming from the fact that you've got a metal pan, a metal frame, and batt insulation, no thermal breaks, and just traditional wood construction on top of that metal, where there's no protection for vapor drive, vapor diffusion, and air intrusion into the assembly, carrying a lot of moisture. And so when that warmer air carrying moisture hits that colder surface, they're getting a significant amount of condensation, leading to the actual sheathing on the floor to turn to mulch again. And they even noticed that there were mushrooms growing along the area. So this is a complete...
It was like 2 feet of mushrooms, and I actually was trying to pull it up with like a spatula.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
You're thinking maybe mushrooms on a pizza.
Well, it was
No.
but it was actually, the smell was really bad, and it's like you said, a health issue.
So
absolutely healthy.
As Chris said, that this is a durability issue. This is also a major health and safety issue. When people sell these types of units, they really need to consider the climate where they're going and just do proper construction. But even if this were to be sold in a really hot climate, I would still want the same assembly that we're going to recommend, because it keeps it cooler. And you could still have weird condensation issues if you don't address it appropriately, if you're air conditioning the space. They also noticed that the mini split system that they put in was for the wrong climate as well. They did tell the builder that they were moving to Vermont, but certain considerations were not taken were not put as an important thing to
taken into account. Have you noticed any issues with inside the walls? Have you looked inside the walls at all?
Well, we wouldn't have really been able to look inside the walls. All we knew is that the contractor who cut that open said that he might suggest that we take a look at redoing the wall, and we didn't really want to think about that just yet.
Do you mind if I just take a little bit back?
Oh.
There is a certain amount of fear with doing any of this work, because it's like working with an old house. How far do you want to go? How much do you want to know?
Yeah.
But if you want to know this, then you want to know that.
It's wet. It's wet and decomposing.
There you go.
Are you kidding?
Oh, mulch.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we'd have to check further up. That could be something that's only happening in the bottom, but that is classic.
It's drenched.
Yeah, deep. So this is that first condensing layer, right? The first condensing layer is when you're looking at an assembly from the cold side to the inside, you're going to have a solid piece in your assembly. And that solid piece, if it's below the dew point, the moisture in the house is trying to get out of the house to make the outside the same humidity as the inside. It'll never get there, right? This is just the pressures. We call it vapor drive, vapor pressure. So it's going through. You guys are sitting in here, you're cooking, you're breathing, you're taking a shower, you're doing all these things. I don't know if you have water hookup or anything, but I'm assuming. And then that is in here. You have got 70% relative humidity, 60% relative humidity. Well, outside, the relative humidity outside is somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. So that moisture is just moving from here into your wall and hitting on that surface and turning into water, right? And oftentimes that'll stay frozen through the whole winter, so you won't notice it until the summer. But this is seasons of this.
And that's because of the foam they use?
That's because the same thing that they did. They didn't. An open cell spray foam is not an air barrier, right? Which is what you'd need. And second of all, it's not rigid foam. We need an exterior layer of that 50% of rigid foam for this climate, or make the whole thing a rigid foam like a blue board or a polyiso. Those are your options.
Feel the metal.
Yeah.
That may be the metal flashing.
Yeah.
Okay, but still, it's
because we're low on the thing here.
So sure, it's foam, and people hear that and they think, "Oh my gosh, this is the salvation of insulation." But the reality is, when it's an open cell in this climate, it's not. It's allowing the vapor diffusion, carrying that moisture again. It's going to condense. It's going to rot.
Now they could have gone with assembly. They could have decided to go with the isonine or some other type of open cell spray foam. But then they should have put a vapor barrier, a vapor closed barrier like an Intello or one of these smart.
Closed cell two part would have gone on more R value. Would have been vapor closed, and it would have solved all these issues.
Yeah,
not
this
all
would
of these issues,
no,
but
but that.
Yeah. So.
And we still haven't. You still don't know what's going on up there, or.
Does that mean?
From an inspector's point of view,
yeah,
I want to see.
Yeah, I'd want to take at least one off
I'm
at
saying,
a couple
like,
layers.
Yeah, I don't care. Go ahead, cut right here so we can see. But like, if the whole thing is like that,
yeah,
you've got a much bigger issue. And we hate bearing this news.
Yeah, this is not fun.
Yeah, but then you can't see my face because.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, we can see part of your face, and it's not happy. But so, in this situation, before putting it back together, this should be emptied. We should do some inspection ports along the walls, and we should look in the ceiling as well. because they did everything wrong here. Why should we assume they did something right there? Exactly.
So, Chris, just as a quick thing, I would have said a great assembly would have been, and could be going
Still,
forward,
right.
is to strip this down. Now, getting to the outside on this one would be tough. If they would have put some rigid board on the outside first, and then the framing, and then filled that cavity with fluffy or more spray foam, two-part,
Yeah.
or a membrane with a fluffy, that would have been great. In this right now, I still think the framing needs to come off the floor,
Yep.
off the deck, has to have a thermal break underneath it with a smart membrane to keep the vapor intrusion at bay and deal with it appropriately
Yep.
at the very least. But that would have been nice if we only had to deal with the floor. The more concerning part now is the walls and the ceiling.
Yeah, because that's structural as well. So I'm agreeing with Jim completely. There's no reason you need to have framing in this floor.
It's not structural.
We can put down a structural foam and do the entire thing on top of foam and just
Wait,
lay
you're
the,
saying this can come
take
out
all,
frame.
well, I'm not going to make say what we should do. I'm saying what we could do, and then we can look at what the right way to move forward is. But I'm thinking there's no reason for framing in here, right? The structure is actually this thing, right? If it needed to be structural, then we could find some way to do structural on top of a couple of inches of foam.
We've seen enough. There's a basement foam that's out there. It's a 3-inch product, and it has framing embedded in it.
Yeah.
And you can actually, it's more
nailing base. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can put that in a vertical wall, but you can also put it on a horizontal line.
Yeah. So Anvic product, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anvic.
So Anvic is just a company that makes EPS. EPS is the white styrofoam stuff, right? So.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
Chris, were they the ones that recommended the zip boards, or is that something else?
I don't like zip.
So you don't. I just wanted to get your opinion on it.
So zip is
There's a big argument about zip.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Joe Stieberg is one, I believe, that really likes it. Because what it is with the zip wall, you have OSB again, the same what we call vertical mulch.
Yep.
It's glue holding it together, making it pretty much vapor impermeable. What they do to the outside is this green layer or orange layer. They say that, that's the magic barrier because it will keep water from getting in, but it will also allow for some diffusion. But the problem is that's only on the outside layer. As soon as you breach that and you put a nail through it and that nail sinks, it starts to allow for water going in. I've seen
and that's always it's just OSB.
Yeah, and it's OSB and it starts to rot. The next problem is, let's say you put it on the outside wall and you had this problem, sure, it would have kept water from getting in, but this vapor diffusion would have condensed and would have rotted it from the inside.
Yep.
So people are relying upon it and saying, this is the next best thing to anything, but they're still not dealing with indoor air quality because it just shuts that down. I'm just really concerned about all these houses
you
going up
need
with
to
it.
have like that plus something else if you were going to use that.
We just want the treatment we'd want here would be the proper fluffy to rigid or all rigid assembly with OSB as sheathing. Fine. Use regular OSB or zip. It wouldn't matter a bit.
Yeah.
And OSB, zip is more expensive.
I like plywood.
Plywood is better.
Yeah.
Always better. Plywood is wood.
More expensive.
This is really pre-digested wood that's been put together with
Well, that's what
glue.
most people do, though. Most people, this is not particle board. Particle board is a much finer product. This is actually considered
The MDF, you
strand.
mean? Yeah.
Oriented. Well, this is oriented strand board.
Yeah.
When it is first built, a 1/2 inch of OSB compared to a 1/2 inch of plywood has the same shear strength, but plywood is more durable.
More
This
resilient.
is more susceptible to moisture intrusion, and that's what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So when it's out of the box, it's equal. But when you start to get some kind of durability concerns, it does this.
So they did everything wrong.
Right. Okay, there we are. That was the first installment of the tiny house. You saw we were inside the tiny house with the owners, and I believe Chris's father. And that's the moment where Jim said, "Well, I wonder what's going on the wall since the floor was rotten. What's going on the wall?" And dug out a little bit of the open cell spray foam and came out with a handful of wet dripping OSB. That's the type of moment where we're like, okay, our experience with building science tells us right there that something is not right, and we were 100% right. So.
Well, with it, I say that we can call this day one, the beginning, and this is where it starts, but it gets better from here as we will go along. You're going to see some really great building techniques. We're going to show you what could work. It's not just because it's a tiny house doesn't mean your problems are tiny, and just because you build a big house and spend a lot of money, it doesn't necessarily mean that your
The
So,
problems will be big, right?
there's going to be a lot more expensive. So understand what we are going to show you in this process can apply across a broad range of regular housing stock and tiny houses and mobile homes and trailers. Whatever you're going to live in, this will be applicable.
Yep. Yep. So that's episode 1. We already have episode 2 in the can, which is moving the tiny house. No, there's a second one. The second episode is us doing a forensic analysis, a destructive forensic analysis of the rest of the tiny house, because we found some rot, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't in a number of other places. So we made some inspection holes with permission. And that was well documented. I do want to point out that if you go to the Journal of Light Construction and type in tiny house, Jim Bradley or Chris West or both of us, the article will come up, and it's an interesting article, and it's part 1, right? Because Tim Healy will be coming out from JLC and documenting our progress as we go. So that was the tiny house. Now we're just going to do the next part of the third part. I was originally doing 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, but I think this is going to be a 5 or a 6-parter. So right now I'm calling this 3 out of 5 of the audit eavesdropping. Here we go.
Okay, let's go.
Come on, play. Why is that not playing? That's the right one. Give me just a second. House calls Vermont. House calls eavesdropping. Barry 3 of 5. Barry 3 of 5. That's the one. Okay, transition. It's not playing. Yay. Okay, well, I'm having another moment here. Let me double check that actually worked. Jim, why don't you just chat a bit while I do that?
Well, as we're transitioning to, some of these things, what we find, you're looking at what you're going to see here in Barrie. Kind of a neat thing you'll see in the basement is back in the day, they were using these huge granite slabs because it was right down the road. And, it was seemingly inexpensive at that time. But overall, if you try to do that now, we were telling the customer, it'd be so expensive. There was one next to a quarry that I was in, a house, and actually this ancient house in a sense where it was in the 1800s, it was built then. It had 10-foot high basements, which just traditionally you wouldn't see in most homes in Vermont of that time period. But the pillars, the support pillars, instead of a wood, unfortunately, or a steel lolly column, we found that they were actually these 1 foot by 1 foot honed granite columns and supporting the whole house. It was really significant and neat to look at. So some
scary in a sense. I mean, getting down in there, I don't know if you all had looked at the episode from last week where we were in the basement, but we're talking about granite this thick holding up an entire house. It's brilliant. I mean, and the structural engineer was there and said, this is fine. It looks really scary. But what was interesting is that the slabs were just kind of set next to each other. So there was this huge, like 5-inch by 1.5 tall gap that was just letting air come in. It was 20 air changes per hour. And just closing those off would probably bring that down to 12 or 11 even. That was the majority of the air leakage. So I think I got this figured out. Let's go back and try it. Still here.
Okay.
Upstairs?
This house, this one first. Take a look at this.
Oh no! So it looks like they did a pretty good job on the inside trim and cleaning that all up. This all looks okay.
Yeah.
Is that your bed, Addie?
It's more of our toy box.
Yeah, this is the Halcyon, Jim. That's the cold version, the cold climate version of that. So that's good news. And this is the room that has the dryer. No. Yes.
Dryer, washer and dryer.
Okay. And so the dryer. Oh, it does go down there in the garage. So we'll take a look at that more clearly.
Yep.
Does this have a fan?
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking probably.
That is, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Although, to be honest, half bath doesn't really need a.
I know.
What?
Chris, I have not seen this one. Who are you putting here? The producers?
Us.
Oh.
That's just us.
Okay, so
Yeah,
should I
you just
write
could-
us?
You just like Chris and Jim. Chris West is fine.
Yep, be careful.
Nice woodwork.
That's the original.
Yeah, no, you feel it. And of course, oh, hello, Pusha. Hi, sweetheart. Classic 1900s way too low railing. We've seen them lower. We've seen them this high, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, how many people didn't fall and
Well,
die
they were
for this?
shorter back then, right?
They were.
Lower protein.
Yeah, exactly.
And is there access to the attic? I assume so.
There is. It's over
The
here.
moisture is high in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend
Just took
a
showers
timer.
too.
So
Yeah.
you can get a plate that has 2 regular and then a stackable rectangle.
Yeah.
And I just bought a replacement one for my house yesterday at Home
Don't
Depot.
call me sir, make
And
me
you
feel
can
old.
set it for always
Okay.
on.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours, something like that. And then always on. And it's a great little thing. And then just, you should have it on an hour after you shower.
Gotcha.
So as soon as you get out of the shower, hit that thing on for 60 minutes, and it'll be much better.
Ah! I'm breaking stuff.
That's okay. I think it was just.
And this is the massage room?
It's the office, and then it leads into my massage.
Okay.
So.
So we're still over the original part of the house, or we're over the garage?
Over the original part.
Okay. And this then is that.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Chris,
Yes, sir.
she has to be licensed.
We are totally.
Contractors don't have to be.
I like the smell. You got a nice odor going on here, kind of cedar.
Aroma. Odor is bad. Aroma is pleasant, Chris.
We get the point.
I'm getting schooled the whole time. I never know what's going
Originally, you
on.
didn't have to have a license in the state of Vermont
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
massage, but they just changed that
Yeah.
a little while ago to massage and body work.
Yep.
So
Which makes
you have
sense.
to be licensed now.
My barber.
But you could
Has to have
start a
license to cut my neck.
start a
It's
building
like a
company
shave.
tomorrow and not need to be licensed.
Yeah.
That's the attic access.
Oh.
Just for this area.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then there's a big hole right here, or a vent or something.
A
That's
soffit.
Closed.
Yeah.
It basically, yeah. So when the roof melts, like ice melts on the roof, or it rains, it goes down.
So that. Okay, because you have a flat roof, it drains down to a point, and that's where it goes down. Okay.
You may want to get these labels off, at your earliest convenience, because the sun will bake them on, and later, after it's been up for a few years,
Oh, okay.
won't come down.
I didn't even realize.
It's harder to get them down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just put this down for just a second, if you don't mind.
We've definitely had issues with the roof on this
Okay.
too. So I think one of the beams snapped recently, but I don't know if it's been like a while
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
What
Or-
space is above here? How much do you think?
It's like this much.
Tight. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
hard to
tight.
affect any change.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm wondering if this is the actual ceiling or if there's a substrate above that. So,
There is.
Okay, there is. Okay.
Yeah. So
So it's
you could go
strapped.
up there and then.
Yeah. We'll get up there.
One thing is, Chris, I drove off and didn't remember my ladder until I was in Richmond.
Do you have a ladder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a ladder.
Sorry
Awesome.
about that.
Is it
Usually I
tall
take
enough to
it.
go up to the top though?
No.
No, just up into here.
Oh,
Once we get
okay.
up into here.
Yeah.
Oh, we just have to get into the attic. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's
Cool.
a pain. I mean, they just blew insulation up there.
And there's no air sealing, almost positively. Yeah, we don't know
Maybe
that
all these
almost
lights
for
are probably
sure.
somewhat leaky.
Yeah.
So
Very, very much.
working CO, I see that.
Getting
so
smell.
That's good.
That's a good thing.
She's starting to get used to
Oh
me.
yeah.
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 Mommy and Daddy aren't throwing them out, so they can't be so bad. Right? Good girl. Good girl.
And then that door leads to a closet, the one behind there, but that leads to the back staircase. that you're
Right,
looking at
right.
next to
That
the
makes
garage.
completely
The guy said they called it the slave staircase, and so all the slaves couldn't go through the house, so they
No
got
one's
their
called
own
it the
private-
slave
Yeah, the guy
staircase.
did. He told
servant,
me.
maybe?
Yeah, maybe servant.
I'm a BIPOC, Joe. I can say the F word. So they didn't
Well, I
want
can say
them-
the S word. I shouldn't say the N word.
Yeah,
Right, that's
they
where
didn't
I'm
want them walking
going.
through the house, so they had them come up the back stairs unless they were working.
So I did live in a house that had servants' quarters on the third floor.
Servants' quarters. I like
Servants'
that.
quarters. They had rooms upstairs for the maids. There was a dumbwaiter. It was not.
Mentally challenged service lift.
yeah.
Ouch.
Aroma.
Yeah.
That's just another.
Yeah.
Storage area.
We do this all the time, by the way.
We're very
Closet,
nosy.
storage area. I don't know how you prefer.
Well, you know, it's possible that the rooms back here did provide access for the help, right? But however we want to name that.
Sorry for the messy.
No, please.
No, we just went to California and got back a little while ago.
Oh, what part?
So, we stayed in Temecula.
Okay.
And we went
I grew up in San Diego, so I know the
Oh,
area.
yep, that's where we flew
We
in.
went to the zoo.
And we went
Oh,
to
yeah.
that was awesome.
3 years since I've been there.
Dan Hanna died recently. That guy who was always on.
Really?
Yeah, he was old.
Yeah, he had cancer or something.
Yeah, but he was also old. But he was the guy who was always on Good Morning America with the animals. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they did
Yeah.
that. They brought him on now and then to show, like, certain animals. stuff.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything that's
Nothing on the ceilings.
really
Yeah.
giving me pause.
We did find a spider the other day.
They're sweet.
Downstairs.
I don't know if I don't think spiders have enough cells to be sweet, but we need them.
And then right in the closet too, it kind of leans forward. I don't know.
Leans
No.
forward.
Well,
You're saying the wall is a bit out of
the wall
true?
is a bit out of true because it pushes all my stuff forward.
Oh.
We're gonna get shelves put on there.
We didn't notice from the outside anything weird with the wall,
Okay.
so it could be just when they put the sheetrock up on top.
Uneven floor.
You can tell by the depth here
Yeah.
that they put sheetrock on top of plaster lath,
Yeah.
right? This should be another ½ inch deeper, the reveals on this.
Right.
So I can tell just by looking at it that they did, maybe when they did that one, the underlying surface was not quite true and they just
Yeah.
slapped it up there.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, this house has moved too since the work too that they've done because I mean this door used to shut, now it sticks.
Bit of movement.
So
Do you have your ladder?
Yep.
Because we would like to get up here first
Yep.
before we do
For
any
sure.
work. If there's vermiculite, we can't really do the test, the blower test.
The blower doors. We can do a lot more, but
Basically,
we,
like granular
of course you can see the
insulation.
slope.
I'm feeling
Because
it.
you could get it into
That
a
was the
bag
low
and it poured into
part.
voids and it filled everything. Problem is, it filled everything. So getting rid of it is a problem because what happened is 80% of it was mined in Libby, Montana, out of one mine, and veins of vermiculite crossed over where you had veins of asbestos, but they just mined it all.
Yeah.
So it's not that the vermiculite's bad,
Oh, it's like
it's
mixed
the
with
asbestos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then we got to see if that's there because we don't want to pull a bunch of air through and out of the attic and through your house and have fibers in the house then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
What's the cat's name?
That's Jinx.
Hi, Jinx.
Jinx is not a people person.
Oh, she's like, hi.
Yeah, she's antisocial.
Hi. No, she seems okay. Hi, sweetie.
She was born on Halloween. That's why she's a Jinx.
Hi. The dog's a bit jumpy and stuff.
Well, yeah, her and the dog don't get along super well. We had her when we first bought the house, and then
You got the
we've only
dog.
had Addie for a year and a half, and then
Hi.
all of a sudden she's like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Here chilling, and then
I had that with my
listening.
cat. We got new cats and she hates me for it to this day. It's been 3 years. She's still not okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, Lada. Good. Let's move the fan.
I think it'll fit, but I moved it back, but it's okay.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of the way so we can.
Yeah, it's just because we have the heat pump right there, so we've been using the fan to
Distribute
Sure.
it. Yeah, yeah.
go in here instead of putting up our air conditioner.
And you shouldn't have to with that heat pump right there, right? You're exactly right. It should just allow for.
Oh.
Yeah, it does.
Do you want us to move the table? Will that help?
I think we're good.
Oh,
Thank you, though.
Okay, strap ceiling, not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Big void.
Yeah.
Actually, an inch.
So they did put 2x4s up for the strapping. Looks like,
Looks like it to me.
yeah.
Is that what holds the ceiling?
Yeah, well, so there's an original ceiling that was plaster lath, just like what you saw in the basement. And in order to put a nice, clean
There are a
sheetrock
lot
up,
of winged things up here.
There's bats up there?
Airplanes.
Oh, somebody grab that. Somebody grab it. There you go.
I thought I'd catch your attention.
Bats would be awesome.
Yeah.
Would have surprised me. I
You
didn't
probably
really
have
hear
less
anything.
spiders.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, and no, wait, we got the whole.
The whole thing coming
Jeez.
up.
Shit.
The nimitz and the.
I'm taking the sponsors.
Yeah. Well, we don't go out there very often.
No, you
so.
shouldn't. It's completely understandable. So the downside with that strapping is that it makes it hard to air seal, right? Because so warm air rises, as we were saying before, and it pushes up against the top pressure plane, which is this surface.
Right.
And any place that air can push up through holes and gaps, where you have lights, where you have recessed lights, where you have a fan, where you have a hole like the attic hatch that isn't air sealed, that air is going up and out of your house, and that depressurizes the house, and the house repressurizes at the lowest point, which is your basement.
So
you get
it
this.
squishes in.
So the air goes out, causes a lack of pressure, and it sucks the outside air at the lowest point where the pressure difference is the greatest.
Yeah.
It's called the stack effect. And in order to stop that, what we'd like to do is get a good air seal on this plane. Well, if you have 1.5 inches of space there, it's hard to get a good air seal.
Yeah, right.
And Jim is digging down to see if there's any indication of vermiculite.
Hint, hint.
He knows. How's it look? Still here.
Yeah, it's smelling him.
Upstairs?
This house, yeah, this one first. Take a look at this. Give you an example of what it's not doing.
Yep. Oh yeah.
That's not really it's supporting air.
Yeah.
It's not supporting the beam.
It's
That's
not
why there could have
attached.
been a cracked beam.
Yeah, that's
No,
why you're
that's
probably noticing
possible.
some movement and such like that. Plus, where that fascia is missing outside, I'm seeing daylight.
Okay.
So it's coming right into the attic with a void big enough for
wow.
bats to come in, it appears.
Yeah.
Now, the makeup of the ceiling, sheetrock, 1.5 inch void, which the mice are so thankful for because they get to stay below the cold space. Then lath, then strapping lath. Then on top of that, you have chopped up fiber. It looks like it was probably mineral wool at one point in time. And then also a thin layer of fiberglass with paper on the back. Then on top of that, you have cellulose. The only good part is I didn't see vermiculite, so there's probably not. But there is an amalgamation of things that just aren't installed appropriately. You might as well take the insulation, put it in the garage, because there's just so much pathway for air to leak and everything else. It's just not, it can't perform effectively. It's doing something, don't get me wrong, but it's not being as effective as it could be.
Yep. Okay.
So what insulates in any insulation is trapped gas, right? And with most insulation is trapped air. If you get something like an EPS or an XPS, the blue board, that gas is trapped in small vacuoles in the board, and it's not always air, it's a blowing agent, carbon dioxide or something else. But most insulation, like fiberglass and cellulose, they trap air. And as long as the air that's in there, because your house heats that up, stays sitting, it's a good insulator. But once wind gets through it, that's called wind washing, that blows the warm air out, and then your house has to heat up the new air that's trapped in there, and then it gets blown out again. So, and with all of these pathways, you've got cold air running under the insulation, and that insulation is just not able to be effective. So what we're suspecting, I don't know if you've ever noticed if your heads are cold when you're up here in the winter.
No.
They said it's more hot up here though during the summer,
In
so
the-
that's an indicator to me.
Definitely that we'd expect to be hot up here in the summer. Not on a day like this. This part of the summer's been nuts. So I'm gonna go up there with my little. I'll put it down over here near the Armada.
Yeah.
You were in an attic a couple weekends.
You wanted gold?
Yeah. I
We
know.
found it.
Yeah, exactly.
We were a couple weekends ago, same thing. We got up there and there was the old high school pictures and yearbooks and stuff. Customer had no idea.
So this is a really interesting attic because it is almost a flat roof.
Yep.
And flat roofs, yeah, you can see the whole pitch. Did you check to see if any of this moisture is active? It doesn't look like it.
It didn't appear to be.
And I don't see any real durability. I don't see mold. Is that mold? That's mold. Yeah, there's some mold on the sheathing here.
Did you notice in the, have you ever been up there during the winter?
No.
No.
Okay. I was just wondering if the backside of the roof gets frosted. Because if warm moisture...
And this is what Jim was talking about, that this piece should be, this piece here should be supporting that, but it's completely unattached. And that's where Jim said he could see the daylight there. Okay.
Yeah, frost. Yeah, it'll be obvious.
Frost on the nails.
On the nails first, but then you can also be on the sheeting.
Does that also
what do you mean
cause
by the
frost
sheeting?
heaves in the ceiling?
Not in the ceiling necessarily, but you have the whole dynamic of the
Certainly
house.
there's plenty of room up here for
And
insulation.
then if moisture's in there for expansion and contraction, so that causes the building to move, plus snow load at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So all these different factors play into it. It's not one item, it's several items.
I've got 3+ feet as far as headroom is concerned, right? If we wanted to have,
in that situation, in this situation, your best bet, honestly, is to get every bit of that insulation. And so what you would do is, because glass will lap and all these big doors, all the plumbing is gone on. So they put that, so they made these penetrations. They never seal it. Is to get all that out of there, so you can see the depth.
So here we go.
And there is insulation vacuums.
I'm up here taking a look at what's going on under the insulation, and I'm finding
Place for 1 to 2 inches of spray foam. And
roofing material.
And that can seal all
So,
those, get you a nice substrate.
As usual, when the people were doing the work, they didn't.
But don't do it all in foam, because all that foam would be too expensive. Just get a great air
I'll
seal.
put this away from here.
Weird areas.
So you can air seal the attic and air seal, well, spray foam the
Basement.
basement.
Yeah, so basically, the biggest in a building, you have your A, B, C's of air seal. A for attic, B for basement, C for central area of the house. Those are usually as to how to follow the course of action for work. Because first, the warm, buoyant air that can push out.
Times Argus 1967, ladies and gentlemen.
And as it pushes out,
Yep.
it depressurizes the house. But natural physics says that the house wants to get equalized.
So that line is for the bath fan.
So usually attic first. But in your case where there's moisture, you don't want to cap off the attic and then all of a sudden trap more moisture in the whole house because you create a mold factory. So if there's a compelling reason to say go B first, then A.
What is that coming all the way around?
B first, then A, and then the
Okay, that's a stack. That's fine. That.
simple caulking, things like that.
What is that?
Other than that, though, I think you're doing the right measures, the right course of action.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, there's more than 3 feet of room here, so we can certainly get lots of insulation up here, but we'll definitely want to do a skim coat
Yes.
in order to get an air seal.
So have them rip all the insulation out of there, suck it all out.
And the piece right behind you, Chris.
Yep.
A little bit of spray foam.
You mean the piece of sheetrock? That's the attic hatch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're also the attic dam, which is basically nothing more than plywood that goes up, screwed together, and then that way the additional insulation.
Nope. I
doesn't
got it.
pour
Thank
back
you,
down
though.
when you open up the
So there you go. Troubling times.
Joe, when you found
Yeah,
newspaper
what's it
from
say?
December.
There's more of it right there if you want
It's
to
the
dig
funnies
it up.
down here.
It's the funnies, yep, and someone didn't even try to do the
people
crossword.
puzzle, little people puzzle.
Let's see if we can go take a look at that back one.
Yep, absolutely.
That one is a little tricky. I'm gonna
That's
warn
okay.
you.
We're up for tricky.
Okay. Because
Yeah, that's okay, Joe. Chris is going up there, not me.
you can't get that piece off without taking the boards down.
Yep, yep.
So, and getting those boards back up there is a bit of a bitch. But I think now that I screw them in, it should be a little easier.
You're talking about the 1x3 that you have holding that. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go, Jim. He's all ready for us.
So yeah, the screws are a little easier. The ceiling is very.
Oh, I got a lick. Thank you very much, darling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here.
I want to mark those.
Where they go?
Yeah.
I think Joe's got it. He's got the A, B, C.
Yeah, not me. I got the ZYX.
So yeah, that should be okay. I think
You should be able to slide it out then.
maybe. There's that nail right there
find
that
out.
is kind of preventing it. There you go.
Okay.
Good luck getting up.
Thank you, sir. Oh, and this is a little strip of resistance heat you have here, electric?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, just baseboard.
Just to bump the...
yeah, because there's no vent.
And another one. So I think you're fighting pretty hard to keep this. You're putting a lot of BTUs, like you said, into this room in the winter to keep it comfortable.
Yeah,
and part of that is the floor.
Yeah.
And part of it's going to be this and the stack effect and all that.
Yeah, because when it was just the screened-in porch, I think all it was like a layer of wood and a layer of rug.
Getting some real bounce too.
So.
I know.
But it's
No substrate. It's just this. So there is no.
And no insulation
6 to 8
of loose fill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's active. Well, I can't say it's active. There's
mold.
monotube everywhere, and I don't see terminations.
Okay.
Are terminations like poop?
No,
Well,
terminations
we're
is where we see it cut off. So that so knob and tube, if you don't know, is how they originally did electricity.
Right.
They did now when you get a cable, it's got a white wire, a black wire, and sometimes a copper wire. That's the ground, right? The black wire is where electricity is pushed to you. The white wire is when it's coming back, and that's all in one cable. They used to do it in 2 separate ones, and that stuff.
Okay.
Although if you leave it in place and don't touch it, and it doesn't move. The insulation they put around it was cotton, and 100 years later, that just falls
burn.
off. Well, it doesn't burn necessarily because it needs a spark, but it's certainly if you touch it at all, it crumbles off, and then you have an exposed live wire. Yeah, not a great
I'm gonna
idea.
go check for my voltage tester.
Okay.
See if I have it on
Yeah.
board.
Yep. I'm gonna get up here with my eyeballs and see where we're at.
I don't know if you can see the beam that cracked too, but
I'll take a look, see what I
really your,
get my head up here. It might be worth it to.
yeah,
It might be worth it to consider redoing this entire assembly.
I would say so too.
Yeah.
We were looking at that. Just ripping off the roof and putting a new one on.
Oh, that's an idea too.
What do you mean by entire assembly?
I was talking about the ceiling. I'm not sure if the roof needs to be replaced. I see what you're saying about some of the. Yeah, it's like somebody stepped on it, and a couple of the boards broke.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got clear daylight to the outside there.
Oh, you do?
On that side, yeah, complete daylight.
Huh.
And there's, like Jim was saying, there's nothing here. This is the ceiling,
Yeah.
and this is strapping, and this is a ceiling they put in. So
Yeah.
originally, I wish I could get. I'm just a little too big to get back up far enough to see what. Come on, Chris, you can do it.
So what would you recommend?
So I'll tell you what I recommend, but first I'd just like to get the camera up and in to see if it can see what that daylight is. No, I don't think I can see that. Okay. Interesting. Bringing a 3-season part of your house into the whole house is a tricky thing that most people think isn't tricky.
Yeah. I believe it.
I'm glad you're not living in this room, and I'm glad that Stephanie has the opportunity to heat it up before the customers come. And I'm glad that they changed the rules so that she can have business again. But I'm also concerned with this.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Right? So we might want to look into looking in the basement, in the garage, and seeing exactly, because I think the supports are this way, so that's like a 30-foot run. Right. So maybe a support beam across at some point to pick that up is an idea. So we'll look at that as well.
I didn't like that either.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So Jim's just going to check to make sure that knob and tube is dead. And while he's doing that, I'm going to start taking measurements around the house. Because I need to... We didn't find vermiculite anywhere, which means we can do a blower door test, which is awesome.
What's vermiculite?
No vermiculite.
No, what is it?
So vermiculite, you've seen it before. It's a kind of a shiny little squares almost of insulation, and it's a mined material. And when they mined it in a vermiculite often grows in the same type of conditions or deposits in the same types of conditions as asbestos. So a lot of vermiculite has asbestos in it. Vermiculite itself is great, it's fine. But when it's mixed with asbestos, then we have a problem. I know. And the cat was coming out to say hi. Jinx was saying hi. And then you went, ha, ha, ha. And the cat says, too much movement. I can't dangle it. I can't handle it. I think you're awesome. I don't know what the cat's talking about.
Well, the good news is we redid that room before the huge wood increase.
Oh, the price changes. It's coming back down. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah,
but it's certainly...
I hope so.
Well, at one point it was $1,700 per 1,000 board feet.
Yeah.
And it started off at $250 before.
Yeah.
So we're back down to, we're back down to like $350, $400 per 1,000 board feet.
Wow, that's
and
a lot
it's
better.
kind of like a flood in a river. It takes a while for that to get to you.
Help, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. I might have one in my car. Give me a second. Give me an opportunity to swap out my battery in the camera as well. And then I can get to... Hi.
Natty girl, it's okay. You're being a good girl, Natty.
Awesome girl. What a good puppy. Yeah. Hi. Hi. Are you going to say hi now? Yeah. You can say hi now. Almost. No. That's cool. I know I have something, Jim.
I have two of them, but not one here.
Okay. I did have something, and that's not gonna do it. It's like one of those. No.
Okay. Well, that was a fun next step, Chris, on that audit. Yep.
That's what I'm saying. For some reason, my mic wasn't on. We have hired a tech person, and hopefully, starting next week or the week after, we'll
Yes.
start having fewer issues with the running of the show during the live segments here. But we still have one segment left. It is 8:30. We're running a bit long tonight, but it doesn't matter. If you're interested in what Jacob Rakusin had to say about workforce development, we're going to throw that video up right now.
Yep.
Next week, our show, and we'll jump on at the very end for another minute, is about blower door tests. So if you have the time, please stay tuned. If you'd like to see this video independently, we'll get it up on the YouTube channel in the next week or so.
Definitely.
Here we go with the interview with Jacob. Hi, this is Chris West from House Calls Vermont, and this week we're going to be speaking with Jacob Deva Rakusin from New Frameworks. New Frameworks is a design build company in right now in a number of parts of western Vermont, northwestern Vermont. I know you guys had an office down in Burlington, but you have a warehouse in Essex, and you and Ace and other people are dotted throughout the state. So welcome. Let me get this set up right. Welcome, Jacob.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. It's an honor to be with you here.
I'm glad that we were able to grab some time where you're actually able to hang out. So we're going to talk about a number of different topics. I'm going to be breaking this up into a couple of different interview segments because you and I we've had so many overlapping magisteria. Like neither of us knew we were both taking the integrated heating class.
Right.
And then we realized it. And that's something I definitely want to dive into because I want to know more about how that went. I'd like to just start off by asking you to give us a bit of background about yourself and about New Frameworks.
Sure. Well, I got my start as an owner builder back in 2000, a young person with a young family trying to establish basic shelter for myself, doing the sort of homesteading path, do-it-yourself path. So that was how I got into the world of design and construction. So my early instruction was through the SMR Design Build School. So that was where I initially learned some of the fundamentals of design and construction. About halfway through the house building process, I realized that I really enjoyed it. Especially the enclosure assemblies and working with natural materials was really grabbed me, and I saw that there was a need and sort of a purpose and a mission that I could help serve with working with those materials. So I transitioned from being an owner builder to essentially just being a natural building systems contractor, doing everything timber framing and a lot of straw wall enclosures, wrapped a lot of timber frames with straw wall assemblies, earthen floors, natural plastering, a lot of finished plaster work, that kind of a thing. And that connected me with my sort of current New Frameworks family through doing that work. Ben Graham and Ace McCarlton, Julie Krause and Jack Mills and I were all sort of doing this work. Ace had started New Frameworks with another person, Chloe Jangiani, who has since moved out west, and I sort of slipped into Chloe's spot when Chloe left, and I was looking for more of a real company to establish with, and that began New Frameworks. And we had been working with Ben since the very beginning. Actually, he was helped me with the plaster work on my house way back in the early days. He was doing a lot of design work and construction, but we were doing a lot of build work on his designs. We would bring him in when we needed design for something, and then partnered together to be a full design build team. And then over the years, we've sort of branched out. So our roots were in custom residential, kind of eco-centric, high-performance building. And I would say around the financial collapse at the end of the last decade, 2009, 2010 or so, really started going pretty big on working with existing buildings and working with existing built infrastructure and kind of broadening our scope there. So that over the last decade or so, we've sort of continued to grow our building performance team and deep energy retrofit work and a lot of rehabilitation work on existing buildings, as well as continuing to do new build design, full design build work. And our design team has matured, so we're doing a lot of just straight design work, and design consultation is a big thing for us now, as well as products. So we build doors, all natural, high performance, sort of passive house level doors, enclosure doors, as well as structural straw insulated panels, enclosure panels.
And those are called Griffin panels.
Yes.
You guys are going full D&D on this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it started with the door line, and Griffin door was just too good of an opportunity to pass up as a door line. And so Griffin panels is the panel line. We've had all sorts of additional puns of what we could do there, but it gets more complicated with the branding. So we're trying to be consistent with all of our products are Griffin products.
How deep can you go on a pun and have it still make sense to the people who aren't in on the joke?
Exactly. Some of those are better left for internal conversations.
Yes, exactly. Well, I remember our first interactions were back when I first joined the Home Builders in like 2011, 2012, and was running the Green Council, which at the time was a small group of builders within the Home Builders, the Vermont Home Builders Association, Home Builders and Remodelers Association. Let me not drop the poor remodelers from that acronym. We had a couple of opportunities to have Ace at that time come in and talk about natural design, designing with natural materials, but also I remember very clearly at the time you guys were working on the building science of airtightness on straw bales, because that
Yeah.
was a nut that hadn't been cracked, and infiltration, as we both know, is a huge part of getting a house to a high performance level. So
Yeah.
that's what I remember from way
Yeah.
back, way back. So
It's the best thing about getting old is you just have this wonderful bank of memories to pull upon.
as long as they stay there, who knows?
Yeah,
Another
sounds good.
15 years I'll be drooling in a cup, but for right now, they're still very fresh in there.
So far, so good. Right.
So tell me a little bit about the new frameworks is a really interesting type of company. I mean, you guys are not just doing natural building; it is branched off into social justice. You as a company, ACE as a stander for trans rights and acceptance in society, and you guys have always been one of the most colorful groups at the Better Building by Design, which is kind of the Vermont local high performance and passive house type, meeting every year. And you guys have been pushing the envelope on some very, very basic and very important social bits about the construction industry. The construction industry has got a history, even now in Vermont. The majority of builders in Vermont, the guys and women and other people who are working on construction sites, are mostly, cis white men in their mid to late 50s. We're having a lot of discussion about workforce development. We had a big meeting this past Thursday, and one of the things that came out of that meeting is it's not enough to have a place for these people to work. Yes, we have to find people. Yes, we have to train them for minimum skills to be on the job, but they have to have a work environment that is conducive to this new reality that we're living in. That's not the reality of 1970s happy days. This is a more inclusive. We're opening up our world, and that was an interesting outcome from this meeting. That they were saying, look, we've got to be able to train these people. That if we're going to ask these young people to come in, that the old people who are there training them also have to understand the social side of that. Can you just tell me a little bit about the social environment and the mission in that way that New Frameworks represents?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I really appreciate that. I think we get known more specifically around our sort of ecological, light ecological footprint construction, and really the sort of the green, friendly for the planet parts of our
Oh,
work,
you're not getting out of this interview without talking about embodied energy. Don't worry about that. We'll get back there.
I'm looking forward to that. We're gonna get there too. Yeah, totally. And it makes sense that that's what is easier to grab onto, because it's these physical products and they're visible and like you can see them, and people like to talk about that because it's external and tangible and less threatening. And so it totally makes sense that yep, that's where number. Social justice has been part of our work since the get-go, because it's the same work, the same economic and social and power structures that allow us to deeply exploit natural resources and create massive amounts of harm into our ecology by virtue of the development of built infrastructure. It's those same forces that allow us to exploit humans and ourselves or each other, depending on where the power structure rely. I know plenty of tradesfolk that are sole proprietors that are heavily self-exploitative, and then there's also, every time you get multiple chains or levels of power and structure within an organization, those same patterns play out, and it can be an incredibly violent workplace, culturally, socially. And so that's
certainly not psychologically safe, if not actually
not.
violent. Yeah.
And you make a really good point that demographically, it's cis white men tend to be the predominance of representation, particularly in the trades, but in design as well. Actually, not particularly in both the design and construction sides of things. And that sort of toxic masculine culture that really pervades that industry, it really harms everyone. I mean, I myself was a very kind of liberal arts and performing arts guy in high school. I was really interested in getting into the trades. A lot of my friends were in the Votech side of high school, and I really wanted to learn carpentry and auto mechanics.
Votech is vocational tech. I just want to throw that in
yes,
there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I ended up kind of getting shifted a little more, or shifted into the the college prep realm of things. I didn't enjoy it. I left high school early and never went to college. But I didn't, and I was totally intimidated. When I wanted to build my own house, I was initially thinking of working in the trades. I was totally intimidated by that sort of hyper masculine, jocular, kind of aggressive, violent culture. Like, just felt I didn't feel comfortable at all.
Homophobic, transphobic,
yeah,
the whole thing.
I was like, oh yeah, no, that's like clearly not my scene.
Well, this is not my friends. I'm not comfortable hanging out in an environment where we're making jokes about people of different sexual orientations and having that be funny. That's not going to make us feel comfortable. You may put up with it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this culture of abusive language, abusive structure. You have to suffer to be able to succeed, and then you make the next person suffer because you had to suffer. And yeah, there's nothing that's not appropriate. That doesn't work. Like, we can't survive effectively as a society if that's our working mindset, let alone do good work. And so yeah, for us, I mean, just to answer your question more succinctly, I mean, it was a huge piece for us, and from the get-go, and recognizing that ecological and social good and benefit and value are totally inextricably linked. The same things that cause social and ecological harm come from the same roots. And ultimately, people and our ecology are inseparable. We're just different components, or different sort of filters of the same macrobiologic systems. And
right.
We respect ourselves and we respect our planet, or we don't. And so yeah, so for us, it's kind of been baked in from the get-go. We've had a lot of really early work in our company focused heavily on supporting women and queer folk in being able to not just be in the trades, but actually be in leadership positions, and supporting leadership, which is a whole nother level of sort of work to do and complexity. And what we've been really working on the last, I would say, 5 years, more recently with more intensity, really diversifying the racial makeup of our company and trying to increase the racial diversity within our team. Again, both in just getting, making it easier for folks to enter into our company, and then also figuring out how to structure to make advancement and capacity development and leadership development more feasible. And so those have been our goals. That's been sort of our mission. And the thing around new frameworks that I think makes that really possible is that we're structured as a worker and cooperative, and that sort of the small d democratic organizational system for new frameworks is, I think, completely part and parcel, not just to our ability to allow for more equity and diversity and inclusion practices to be possible, and advancement through the company, because folks enter in as owners, not just as employees. Like, there's a real sense of ownership that folks have as being part of the company, but also it's not just a sense of it, it's actually real business ownership, which is something that a lot of minority demographic communities don't have. It's one thing to get a job, it's another thing to be an owner. And so that's a really important part of it for us. But what we found to be, when we're looking at the world of high performance building, there's sort of this like initial breakthrough moment folks have in recognizing that enclosure systems and mechanical systems and sort of the occupants all work together in an integrated fashion to make a high performance building work. You really have to look at integrated within the building. And then as we mature beyond that, we look and see, and actually the whole process has to be integrated. Designers and builders and owners all have to be in the same team, and all the stakeholders have to be aligned to be able to achieve these high outcomes of our buildings. And we've just taken that same concept of an integrated sort of philosophy one step out, and looking at our actual business structure and what is the nature and the organizational structure of our company, how do we make sure that that's as well integrated and inclusive and responsive and nimble and flexible and all the things that we need to have a high performance product at the end of the day. To be able to have a high performance process to realize that product, we need a high performance company to have a process that yields an outcome. And it's not that you can't do that in a more conventional ownership structure, but for us, the cooperative model is, in our case, for our culture and our goals and missions and values, has been an inextricably linked part of that whole sort of social environmental mission around our work, is a governance structure that really allows that to flourish and allows us to be leaders within that work.
Yeah, that's why when I was getting your title together, I was like, okay, Jacob Dever-Accusen, co-owner. Oh, wait a second. Now, let me look on the website and find out what titles you all have. I mean, I've put together a lot of funky companies in the past and come up with hilarious names for the people who run it. All Grand High Poobah is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Right out
choose,
of the
right? You get to choose when it's your company.
So just to spend another minute on this corporate structure thing, can you explain to me how that works? I'm Chris. You guys decide to offer me a job. How do I enter into that owner worker thing, and how does that look like? It's kind of foreign to a lot of people. I'm just like,
really great question. Yeah. And there are lots of different types of worker cooperatives. They work in lots of different ways. I'll explain ours kind of briefly, and then we can spin into as much detail as makes sense given our time. So we're technically an LLC and structured as a multi-partnership LLC. So we're not a cooperative corporation. Right. So we don't have any employees. There's no employee structure. Everyone enters in as an owner. And there's basically two tiers of ownership. There's the trial membership is where what someone would enter into as sort of a new hire. And then once you've been with us for, there's a series of criteria you have to meet to be able to be a full owner. You have to be with us for a certain number of years. You have to have a real intention of being a full long-term owner. There's a buy-in for purchasing your equity stake in the company, et cetera, et cetera. There's some training in business ownership and management, and then you can join as a full member. And that is what it sounds like. It's a full ownership stake.
A voting member in an LLC as described by the state laws, right? Everybody who is a member in an LLC, a membership LLC, has a vote towards things. So okay.
Yeah, and so our governance structure, it's sort of, the companies run in sort of two different, there's operations and there's governance. In governance is like sort of how the company is run, decisions around policy and overarching sort of governing our organization. That's exactly, say we have a board that is elected amongst the full membership.
Did you say Borg or board?
Board.
Okay, right. It sounded like you said Borg.
A Borg. We could change that name because that actually sounds a little more interesting. Those meetings might be more fun. No, they're great. They're fun meetings. But we have a board, D with a D, made of the full members that is responsible for all the policy development and overall governance of the company. We have a kind of a modified consensus decision-making process that the board follows for that. But then that's just the governance of the company. A lot of people think like, oh gosh, that's so inefficient because you have to have a million conversations and all the paint colors are decided by committee, and like, no. In operations, it's very hierarchical in what would be very familiar to a lot of jobs, or in the case of the design side and architectural team, in that there's, there are lead builders or the lead designer, and then there's, skilled folks that kind of work all the way down under that to apprentices, and folks report up to other people, and that there's those familiar patterns of how decisions are made in operations are, that looks very similar in terms of the organizational structure. But what is different is culturally. Again, there's I've seen cultures that really support inclusivity and shared decision making and sort of intentional capacity building and leadership development within companies that are, a single owner with employees. Like, that can absolutely be real. We have that really like patterned in and cultured in and structured into our company, from our performance reviews to how we communicate tasks on a daily basis, how people are filling out their timesheets. It's sort of built all the way through that. There are, real opportunities for people to take ownership over their own work and be able to, advance and develop within a sort of a shared, a cooperatively owned structure that folks see their own identity of ownership within, and that's really real. And so, a couple of like tangible pieces around that. We have all company meetings quarterly, and we go through all of the finances and accounting of the company with everyone in the company. So we all have that transparency and awareness of how we're doing, and also how our role fits into that, and why it's important to to track your hours against a task accurately, so that we can know how we're doing on the job. And that's, we all do well when we all do well kind of mentality. But that goes down to the point, I'm thinking now of, like you mentioned, air sealing. I've had multiple times where some of the sort of apprentices or newer folks in the company that frequently be thrown into an air sealing job and just be like, I hate it up here, it's hot, it's dirt, like, I just want to get the job done and get out of here. Like, that's a super common way to bring yourself to low-level manual labor, right?
Yeah.
We have folks that are in those same positions be like, sending me photos on their iPhone, be like, hey, does this look like a problem? Like, the blower wasn't really showing much, but it seems like a big hole. Like, doing the level control and like ownership over their work, that like, there's no one else up there. Like, you just cover up some cellulose there and you'd never know, and like, we'd be done, and you get that level of result. But everyone is so bought in and invested in the company, because the company is made, because it's their company, that everyone takes ownership and responsibility over the quality of work. And that's really what's needed to be able to not only develop high performance building in a way that really works and is effective, and that level of quality control is there, but for us, in doing it in a socially just and ecologically just way with unfamiliar materials, or being new and weird, we've had to prove ourselves, I think, to a higher level or a higher standard than we would if we were more normative. And it takes all of us, kind of pulling together and rowing in the same direction with common purpose to be able to sort of excel and deliver those products in a way that folks are like, oh wow, yeah, this model is actually incredibly effective, and everyone like is happy. I mean, that's the thing. We think the most common piece of feedback we get from our clients is like, everyone's just so happy, and they're like singing on the job site. And I'm not to say we don't have bad days and we're not stressed out. Like, that's super real.
Of course.
Like, the general culture of like, we love our work, it's meaningful, it feels good, it takes care of us, and we take care of others through doing it. Like, that's all of that, I think, is the sort of the soft part, or I keep saying culture for lack of a better word, but sort of the cultural part of at least our cooperative, and being a cooperative is an inextricable part of that.
And that talks very directly to what I was hearing from HR people and other people, owners, saying, once we get people into the company, whatever the structure is, we have a really good retention rate, but getting them in and having them stay for that initial thing, no matter whether it's a top-down structure or a cooperative structure. I was speaking with Malcolm Gray the other day from Montpelier Construction, another cooperative structure. I can clearly see that if I was to be a member of the LLC, I guess, because you're not ever an employee under those circumstances, right? Even if you're low level.
Not in this case.
Right, exactly. Not in the way you have it structured. One of the things we're looking to do, and you mentioned very clearly, is we want to try to increase diversity, not just along the LGBT and cis and trans and all of that, but also on a racial spectrum. And we live in, either, depends on what year it is, but either the whitest or the second whitest state in the country. It's either Maine or Vermont. We're always flipping back and forth.
Right.
And I have friends in numerous companies and sectors who are like, we have in our charter a requirement that we promote ethnic diversity. How are we able to do that? And so I was wondering what your experience has been trying to tackle that particular thing here in in northwestern Vermont.
Yeah, it takes a lot of intention for sure, and I think I'll speak to like our process has been around hiring in a second, but just on a really overarching level, I think what's really critical, and I say this not as someone that has had this huge wealth of experience and speaking from some position of mastery. Like I can speak from a position of mastery on embodied carbon. I just want to be really clear.
And we'll get there.
Speaking from a position, yes, like that'll be like a little more comfort zone. I'm not coming from a place of mastery as much as a really sort of humble practitioner of bringing Jedi principles into our work and learning a whole lot along the way. And this is
like, what is a vibe?
Yeah, like really, how do we do this? Like, I'm literally in the middle of an active training so that the Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility put on, like a multi-month training on Jedi practice. Like, this is active work. I'm very much a student in this, but what we have found thus far along our journey, it's one thing to recruit people along demographic lines. It's another thing to create a culture in which folks feel like they can actually be comfortable and safe and thrive. And there's another thing entirely for folks that feel like it's not just a job, but a career, and they can advance and take like, and really like have development potential within an organization. And those are three different things, and all need to be addressed accordingly to have that potential. And we're seeing even within our structure, even as like, everything I just said about our cooperative structure and how inclusive it is and how much potential people have for growth and ownership and whatnot, are also seeing like there are some limitations we're seeing in having, for example, governance be controlled by full membership. That takes quite a minute to be able to get full ownership. And there's a financial barrier to that, and there's a time barrier to that. And that's actually a liability for whole like segments of the demographic that we're trying to bring in. Yep. So we're working on looking at that right now. So it really guts all the way out to the barriers and biases that are built into the organizational structures of our companies. And I just want to be really clear that like, we're all the way out there when we're talking about how do you do that. But again, kind of like, the materials are the easiest thing to look at and be like, why is that green? It's the hiring process is the most like tangible piece. It's like the first step. It's the immediate thing of actually getting people into the organization. We've looked at a couple of things. It's really easy to, and in some ways like super reliable and helpful to have like a word of mouth or direct network connection for folks coming into your organization. And that's awesome. But in that most of our networks tend to be pretty homogeneous and tend to reflect ourselves. Right. It means that's a pretty poor way of being able to reach out to communities. For
diversity, across.
Completely. Yeah. So there's some like real active work that goes into like intentionally moving beyond, your immediate circles or the easy places that you already think to look at, because that's only going to reflect back your own experience. We're trying to bring in other people, different experiences. You have to find where they are and meet them there.
Right.
So we cast a broader net in terms of, we actually had some support from other organizations helping us do some outreach for hiring and whatnot, but that's definitely been a part of it. Like looking regionally, we've been trying, recruiting for folks to come into Vermont. That's like, I would say in general for example, some of our design positions or some of our management positions we've hired for recently. That said, we've had a very different and really exciting experience as we've been building out the Griffin panel team, where we work. So Griffin panels are, again, they're built using native wood, like a locally milled framing lumber and straw and locally produced agricultural products. And for us, we saw this really amazing opportunity to work. We worked with Migrant Justice, which is a farm worker advocacy organization for migrant farm workers, and work with them to help us make some connections into that community and see about helping to bring some of that workforce and new American workforce into new frameworks. And that worked incredibly well. We have an amazing crew of folks that we've sort of found through the migrant justice community. And it required us to do a bunch of things to meet them where they are and to create a more inclusive environment. Like language justice has been a really big focus of our company, and making our designs bilingual and having our membership onboarding materials bilingual and taking longer to explain them, and recognizing that there's some cultural differences around what a job has looked like for the migrant community in the past and how that's different from a worker ownership cooperative and what that means, and really taking the time to explain that and make sure that that's clear. Our internal communications being bilingual, and recognizing some of the cultural just differences from, a white Vermonter and a new American Latino, or like we've got some really different cultural backgrounds around communication and just our, the 1,001 assumptions that we realize we make once we start
Every second of every day. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so holding a really strong intention that like, yep, those things are real. We need to examine those, just allowing space for those differences to be real and trying to address those. And there's like 1,000 little examples, but that's what it is. It's 1,000 little things every day. So that doesn't really show up in policy quite so clearly as much as it does like, embodied intention of like, all right, we're creating spaces for different types of folks to be here. And that's been enormous for us. And we now have non-native English speakers I said that entirely incorrectly. We have not first language English speakers.
Right.
English is a second language speakers.
Yeah.
Both in our crew in building panels as well as within our design team. And to be able to like have that facility of making it possible to translate those plans, and what I've learned from folks that have a really different type of life experience and what that means for design and what that means for the products of our buildings and how they're used, like way better, so much better. And on multiple levels, again, there's like probably a dozen things you could tick down and say, oh, this is how this very specific, design detail got improved upon by virtue of diversity of experiences. But like that should be super obvious to all of us, that if we all like
that bringing in various points of view is going to expand your ability to have new ideas and bring those in. And yep.
Absolutely. And so it's easy to talk about why that's a value add to the company and it's like another resource to exploit, but it's also like it's valuable to us as humans. And we recognize that like everyone, like literally everybody benefits when we can open to a plurality of opinions and perspectives. So it's very much a matter of the organization being willing to change and committing very real time and financial resources to doing the training, to doing the policy changes, to really unpacking and understanding what the barriers are and making real changes to make it more possible in order for folks to then be able to have a place that they can really take ownership over their work and be a long-term member of the team.
I have too many things I want to talk to you about, and time is a factor. But one more question on this is, one of the things we're looking at is upskilling existing workers, and it seems to me like what you guys have been able to create is an environment where people are able to say, yeah, I'm interested in that. Let me do a little work over here. Are there people getting to a point in your company where they're like, okay, I've learned enough. I'd like to start my own company over here? Because one of the things that we're noticing in this push to increase the weatherization tech programs and the crew chiefs and all of that on the weatherization side, that the state has a commitment to weatherize 120,000 houses by 2030. Whether we'll make that, it includes the necessity of good companies that are creating good possible new leaders to go out and make their own companies. Are you seeing? Is that something you guys have in view when you're working with people? Are there people who have left your company and made clones or new companies?
Yeah, I'm not.
Or is it just so much fun working for new frameworks? No one ever leaves.
I mean, that's more common right now, and there are definitely folks that have worked with us for a while and then have gone into other things, and that's the examples that come to mind are folks that were really more interested and focused on doing like fine woodworking and shop work, which is only a small portion of the work that we do. So not a good fit there. And other folks that really just didn't want the scale and structure of our company, really want something a lot more
small scale and stripped down, like that's totally great too. In terms of the content of the work, and you mentioned home performance, so I started our company's building performance team in like 2012, 2010, sort of back in that era. So I was getting trained up and starting to do weatherization work, and did it for a while, like 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And then I had to stand down from doing field work because I was just too involved in design and sort of management stuff. And so that work kind of got quiet for a minute in terms of the scale and so complexity of those jobs that we were doing, as I wasn't able to run a team. And we had 1 or 2 different people sort of show up to do some different leadership work there. One person's actually doing his own work now in central Vermont, like having learned a fair amount and still doing a lot of great building performance work. Good friend and colleague, we talk a lot. And so I feel like, yep, there's been some support there, and that's been awesome to see. It just recently, like in the last year or two, couple of years, one of our longer term folks, Mike Zanakis, who'd been working with us since the early aughts, like really identified, like I want to do this. I want to do building performance work. I want to lead this team. We invested in him getting BPI certified, and really not just getting certified, but like what it means to actually run a team, and I said the leadership skills and like business management skills and whatnot. And so paired him with Andrew Gansenberg, a fantastic project manager we brought into the company, to give some of that project management support, so that folks in the field can really stay focused in the field and do their best work there. And then Kat Campbell is a woman who's also identified that she's super psyched on building performance. She got BPI certified in healthy home. She's got her healthy home evaluator. So now she's kind of skilled up and ready to roll. And what our model has been is, if we see that there are folks that are excited and interested in doing something, and it passes the sniff test, that yep, there's a market for this, and you're committed to this, and this fits within our mission, and you want to run with this, then we will do our best to actually support you being able to take that and run with it. And we had established precedents of the building performance team, and I had my own knowledge and expertise to be able to help sort of train and mentor Mike and Kat into getting to that role. But like, that was their interest, and they could have gone off and spun out a team, and we could have just said, yeah, we're really just doing new construction, but like, you guys should totally do that. That would be awesome. But it was in New Framework's interest to actually grow as an organization. We've gone through a really large amount of growth in the last few years to be able to accommodate, we think this is going to be more successful if we can bring our experience and our organizational
under the same
skill
umbrella.
And capacity to bear, and we can support this team being able to just focus on doing like really awesome building performance work, and capitalize off of our existing management structures and infrastructures and skills and leadership and training, and be able to facilitate that work happening better. Now, we're not going to be able to grow forever. Like there's a bell curve, and I think we're in a place where we're psyched to stick for a while now. And we've been talking a lot about the building performance team being an amazing model for both when folks enter into new frameworks, as a training mechanism for folks entering into,
because you get the building science right there with it.
You learn it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You learn how to do hard, dirty work and feel proud of it. You learn how to do work that
crawling
is
in people's nasty basements and attics.
Right. And you learn everything about how buildings work and how they fail. In weatherization work, you really learn good building and good design by seeing all the failure points. It's like the
that
best
is
learning
so
you
true.
can possibly get.
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about that as a mechanism for training folks coming into our company, and have sort of started doing that actually quite actively. Like our panels team had them working on some weatherization projects, again, just to get familiar with their company, get familiar with their work, get familiar with buildings, get familiar with building science. And I would absolutely love it if I would consider that a potential marker of success if we built that into our business plan, that folks get trained, do some work, and then can then go off into the world. Because it's hard to sustain doing attic and basement work long term. It's hard on the body, it's hard on psychology. It's a very special person who can do that full time for decades. So like, if we recognize that's a high turnover position, then great, we create some, as an industry partner, to do some of that training development work. I've been doing so much building science education for well over a decade of my career, from writing books to teaching programs to consultation to workforce training to training within our company. So that education and industry support and industry improvement mission from within the private sector has been such a part of what we've been doing since the get-go. I feel like, it's all our responsibility. And for those of us that have that capacity, it's like really our responsibility to try and bring those resources to the community.
I couldn't agree further. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, that was awesome. We're gonna hold that as part one of the interview.
Love it.
Yeah, well covered. Good stuff. So that was the. I want two of these on. That was the interview, the last of the three interviews with Jacob de Veracusen of New Frameworks. A wonderful man, a real mensch in the classic definition and sense of that word. This was the third one. We'd already spoken with Jacob in the same interview, but it was three parts about embodied energy and also about radiant ceilings. As we have varied and wide and varied interests in various aspects of the building industry, including building science and interesting systems for heating and cooling and other things. So thank you again to Jacob for being willing to participate in that interview. We are going to have him back at some point. We certainly want to learn more about these tools when it comes to embodied energy, and we hope to be hearing more from New Frameworks as being a real leader in the movement towards a more socially responsible builders. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Once again, Jim, I let Jim go. It's a good time for him to sit down and not do anything. He's a very hard worker and works multiple hours more than I do. So until next time, next Tuesday at 7, we are going to be talking about blower door technology, about what a blower door is, how a blower door works, what are the various uses for blower doors beyond just the diagnostic of how tight a house is, the various types of things a blower door can tell us about a house, not just infiltration, but removing noxious gases and things like that during the installation of spray foam, for instance, which Jim was just talking about with me earlier today. So until next time, this is Chris West from House Calls Vermont. Thank you very much for your attention, and until next time.